everybody. Back at it. Three old friends, music never ends, number 46. And this, we kind of jumped around a little. Usually we wait a little more. We had just done what, Pink Floyd, but we've already gone to a group, and I think it's a group that all of us feel a special part of. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Well, it's Crosby, Stills, and Nash. We added the Young, but all three of us is the only. We just figured this out. It's the only concert that all three of us were at together, minus Farm Aid 2, which I always say I still don't remember Mike being there, but definitely remember Crosby, Stills, and Nash and us because we rented a car and we moved to along with George Davis, and we drove up to Dallas to go see Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and it was one of the best concerts I've been to. Again, parts that we can remember, but this group has always been a major part. For me personally, it was Dave was kind of the catalyst in introducing me to a lot of it, and lighting that spark to all the rest of them. I think I own on vinyl at least 10 different, like Crosby, Stills, Nash, Crosby, Nash, Stephen Stills. So that's how we kind of approached the playlist. We chose two songs from Crosby, Stills, and Nash, one song from Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, and then two songs from either Crosby, Nash, or a wild card, so to speak, or a variation of Crosby, Nash, Young, that kind of stuff. So before we start, Dave, any thoughts on Crosby, Stills, and Nash?
Well, like I said, I'm kind of waiting for this one. This is one of my favorites. It's bands of groups of all time. I love everything they've done. As we said with the other things, it's just so hard when they have such a great body of work, right? Between all their solo and their compilations and their collaborations and things they did, there's so much great music out there. So trying to narrow it down to 15 songs is a little bit of a challenge, five each for us. But I think we did a great job of representing all of those things pretty well, and the different artists. And because even though it's Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young, what you kind of pick up on is, oh, that's a Crosby song. Oh, that's a Nash song. Oh, that's a Stills song. Just as the nature of how they wrote their songs and they did their things. That's kind of how it works out. So, but I think we did a good job of featuring the lead vocalist if we needed to in a certain situation. So, good job, both of you, and putting together what I think is a great enduring playlist.
Mike, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've liked these guys a long time. Love these guys a long time in various forms, solo as well. I think I was more heavily into Neil Young as far as the solo guys, but I knew a lot of their songs, and some of them are represented on here. Some of the solo, or two of them together, whatever. And I don't know if you guys mentioned this, yeah, but we saw him. Yeah, you did. We saw him in Dallas in '87, and that was a great show. I agree, one of my favorites too. And I also agree, just not enough room on this playlist for all the songs. It's kind of, I think I've said this before, it's painful in a way. It's like, okay, I'm out of time, and there's like, another 5-10 must-haves on there that I'm just gonna have to just not worry about it and go on. But yeah, I'm glad we're doing it.
I agree. There's some songs obviously that are huge that we miss, but obviously these are our favorites. And so I started out with what I consider probably a timeless song by them, Wasted on the Way, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And Mike pointed it out coincidentally, it was the first song they played. And I think this is one of those songs that it's funny, it's one of those, and we mention this all the time, how you hear it back then, it doesn't mean it's not as relevant as it is now. Even though for them it was pretty relevant, even though they were still kind of younger and stuff. But they've always been a band that's been a little chaotic. They've had their ups and downs, and so they wrote this song. And of course, back then for us, Wasted on the Way, it's kind of that, oh yeah, we're wasted on the way, and then. But it becomes more relevant when you listen to the lyrics and how much time goes past and how much time you do waste sometimes, over petty things sometimes, or things that you really shouldn't focus on. So I thought this was kind of appropriate for it, and I think it's one of their best songs.
Yeah, I remember I looked this up. It was 1982. I thought it was earlier when it came out, but in 1982, this was not the kind of thing that was on my radar. I heard it on the radio a lot, and it was only later. I mean, I was starting to get into it. I think by then I had Deja Vu and I had a bunch of Neil Young stuff. But you're right. It means something totally different. As like a lot of these songs as we get older, and based on what you just said, it reminds me of the last group playlist we did was Pink Floyd, and it starts out with Time, which is a very similar idea. It's like, nobody told me when to run. I missed the starting gun. It's like you squander all this time, in life doing whatever, and you realize maybe some of the important things are slipping by you. So good choice, Jose.
Yes, that's one of my favorite songs. I think we'll find too that it's one of our favorite albums too, because it has so many great songs on that album. I think Mike wanted to use something on there, and I was, considering another song as well. And it's where they kind of took a break from themselves, and then they kind of came back together. So Wasted on the Way, it was great because they brought the group back together. Probably because Crosby was in jail and doing stupid stuff, but when they finally got back together and started making music again, it was great. This has a special meaning for me too, and I don't want to uh, get all teary or anything about it. But I think about just the fact that us three kind of went our separate ways for many years there. Yeah, I would touch base with Jose now and again, maybe once a year, twice a year. He was up in Ohio doing his thing, and Mike and I kind of lost touch over the years, and we were raising families and doing different things, and so it's kind of the same kind of thing. I'm glad that we had an opportunity, a reunion of sorts 2 years ago when I think it was Mike said, "Hey, maybe we should do some kind of virtual playlist thing," and we started talking about it, and lo and behold, we've been able to do this for a couple of years now. But more importantly, we've reconnected our friendships, and we've been able to see each other, at least virtually. And I think Mike has seen Jose now in person a few times, and those kind of things. So I think to me, this is a great song, and it's kind of reminds me of us getting back together again, the three of us, not Crosby, Stills, and Nash, but us three anyway. Anyway, so next song.
Well, let me just piggyback on it and say that didn't escape me as well. I mean, obviously it has a special meaning for the three of us, and especially Dave, since we were kind of really were heavy into the Crosby, Stills, Nash. But you're right, Dave. It really reconnected us as sure we're not a group, but it did reconnect us, and it didn't get past me for sure. So it's kind of one of the reasons that song's on there as well.
Yeah, amen. all of the above. I agree.
Well, the next song, I didn't know where and when I'd put this song on. I was just thinking of favorite songs and that I liked, and from the Crosby Nash catalog, I've always just loved. The first time I ever heard it, just did something to me. And when they started, it's called "To the Last Well" and "Critical Mass." And when it starts out at the beginning with that a cappella with Crosby and Nash doing their thing, the harmonies and everything just unbelievable, and then they could go from that to essentially a protest song, right, about killing whales and doing those kind of things. It's like the combination of both those things are just exactly what epitomizes what Crosby Nash and what Crosby Stills Nash really stood for back in the day. And so I wanted to put it on. I just thought I would throw it on very, very early in the playlist.
Yeah, if I knew that Dave would put this song on, I just knew there were 2 or 3 songs I knew Dave was going to put on because, well, we hung out a lot, and this would be one of those songs. And I knew for sure this song, if he didn't pick it, I was definitely going to pick it. And because it is one of my favorites, and he turned me on to it. And it's like you said, Dave, I think one of the reasons, I don't want to speak for y'all, but one of the reasons that I think we do enjoy Crosby, Stills and Nash, that they do have kind of a social conscience that, and we'll see in some of the other songs that not only are they singing beautiful music, making beautiful music, but they're also trying to say something more important, more relevant. Not that that's an important part of any musical group, you can just play straight rock and roll, but they had a social conscience that I think kind of it well at least for me it says something more than just, hey, we're just rock and roll, rock and roll stars. We also want to kind of change the world, so to speak. And so, yeah, and I knew you were going to play it, and I love that song, and I love when they have the special and they show the whales and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's just a beautiful song.
Yeah, I know when we were making tapes, I was involved again much less shorter period of time than you guys were already making them. But I know at least a couple of um, Crosby, Still, whatever iteration made it onto some of our playlists. And I know I heard this one. I'm not sure if it was on one of our playlists or one that you just played occasionally. But it's like for for however long I heard it, it's in my memory. I don't think I ever had this particular record. But yeah, so and then about the protests, the political stuff. I mean, I think they all kind of brought that in separately, and it kind of became bigger, even more so when Neil Young was in there. Um, and so, and then the other thing I just want to add real quick with the harmonies, you hear them, you know who they are. They're just this amazing ability to harmonize. We've lost one of them now, David Crosby, but it's what was I going to say? Oh, this is the last thing. They were like a super group, like one of the early super groups. You have these big people from the Byrds and Buffalo Springfield and the Hollies, and a lot of super groups. The idea is exciting. Having like, oh, these guys are going to play together. It'll be amazing. And they don't really hold up. A lot of times it's. But these guys, it was like the sum was more than the parts. It was just they had this something magical thing that came out of it. So of course the message in the song, yeah, save the whales. Don't don't want to find the situation, have the situation where you see the last whale washed up on the shore somewhere. And I could go on and on about that, but I won't. But so from there, I went to my first song is Looking Forward off of, I think that was the name of the record, but it came out, it was their last Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young project, the last thing they put out in the early 90s. And this song in particular, I knew before the record came out because the first time I saw Neil Young was at Bass Concert Hall at UT, and it was all acoustic. And he played this song. He played a couple of others that ended up later on solo records, and maybe another one off this record. But and just that show, it was cool. He had like it was just him on stage. He had this big organ that he would pump with his feet and play at a grand piano, and then just this ring of string instruments. And he'd kind of wander around in a circle and pick one up. He had Hank Williams' old guitar, among other things, but he played this one on piano, and it was awesome. And then when I saw that record come out, I'm like, oh, that's great. So I like it, and it's the message. It's like we're not done yet. We there's still some future ahead of us. And I like the line, writing a song won't be very long, trying not to use the word old, which is very poignant and timely given where they were at that point.
Yeah, it's a great song, and it's. I have to have a confession here. As much as I would have said, "Oh, I know every single Crosby, Stills, Nash song and every Crosby, Stills or CSNY and all that," I didn't have this album. This was again that period in the '90s where I was busy starting a family and doing all that, and I wasn't probably collecting a lot of records and CDs and things by about that time. So this one passed me by, and so by putting it on, it became new and fresh. And then I'm like, wow, how have I not heard this song? So I'm glad you picked something off an album that I didn't own. Yeah, it's a great representation of CSNY together. But as I said earlier, kind of it features, you know, Neil Young as a lead vocalist on this one, and just a great song.
Yeah, it is a great song, and it's a great album now. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young have had their, if any of them have their ups and downs, that's for sure. They, you know, they toured once in the early 1970. Of course, the famous Woodstock where they played together. It was only the third time, and then of course, uh, they went on and they had the '74 tour, which is kind of abject failure until Neil Young decided he didn't want to play anymore, so he left. But and it's funny that we put all of us put Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young songs, all three. And more interesting is that we use a different album, you know, and because there's only three of them, and there they are right there. You know, you obviously have the greatest hits one, but these are the three that they played. And my choice was Almost Cut My Hair, the very first Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young album, and I picked that song as it was one of the first songs in my world where that was kind of that rebellious, like you can be a rebel, you can be something different, you know. And so well, first let me talk about Looking Forward, which is completely different, is Mike's song, which is a beautiful song, and it's a great song. I think that was written separate from, like Mike said, separate, and then he brought it to them for this album when they were putting it together, when they decided they were going to tour again. And that tour wasn't the most popular amongst people who, because of the political messages that were being sent and certain things like that, people actually walk out of it and stuff like that, which is crazy unto itself. And always, you're always asking yourself, what did people expect from Crosby, Stills, and Nash Young, just like what did they expect from Roger Waters? But and this song again is one of those that hits relevant for us. I mean, we're 60-ish. Mike will be 60 soon, and but we're still looking forward. I'm still looking forward to playing these, you know, these songs. So and making these playlists, and even though this is kind of obviously the last Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young will ever get, because of course David Crosby passed away, uh, they still put it together enough to be together. So I really love the song. So getting back to mine, Almost Cut My Hair is one of those songs where, you know, obviously the line of letting your freak flag fly, that hits me. It's like, yeah, I can do what I want to do. I don't have to follow the norms. And it was kind of my first kind of, that's my rebel song, so to speak. And so it's one of my favorite songs off that album. And he actually sang it when we saw him, and because he was talking about, maybe he didn't. Yeah, he did. He played it because he was talking about getting out of jail, his first time being back in Dallas. That's what I remember from that. And so I just think it's such a fantastic song, and it really showcases David Crosby.
Yeah, this off Deja Vu, and it's, I think, my first of their records and in any variety that I got, and it was this one always stands out. It's very, I don't think I think it's almost just basically a David Crosby song, because I'm not sure they even harmonize on there. I'm trying to think, but it's very much him, you know. And it's a great song. Of course, it doesn't mean quite the same now. I could almost shave my beard, I guess, which I did recently. But yeah, it's a good song. Great album. Love that album.
Yeah, I think in an earlier playlist when we were doing some of that, we did put on the song "Deja Vu" has made it on one of our playlists. So yeah, I was thinking about pulling a song off this album as well, and then like you said, we were just kind of as it went. I wasn't really quite thinking about it, but after you put on that one, I wasn't thinking let's pull the third CSNY album in. I was just thinking, what next song do I want to put on? Um, you know, I love the Almost Cut My Hair. You know, always been a favorite of mine. Then the next song I chose was off another CSNY album, and I know this is kind of weird because I went with This Old House, which it features the Neil Young thing. So we did Neil Young on Looking Forward, and then 2 songs later, Neil Young kind of on it again. I thought about doing like Got It Made or American Dream or something like that off that album. But this song, This Old House, is my favorite song on that album. So I figured I might as well put it on here. Just like the lyrics of it, and a little sad in the fact that he talks about his wife working in the garden, and then the man from the bank's going to come take it all away. They're going to lose their property and everything. But just a sweet song. And again, I didn't intend to do Neil Young, then David Crosby, then another Neil Young, but it worked out okay. And wanted to get my favorite song off that CSNY album out there.
Yeah, I really like that album. It's kind of underrated. I like Soldiers of Peace, which they played at our thing, and Night of the Generals are all also good. But this song is really one of those, and it obviously, again, going back to the social conscious of Neil Young, heavily involved in Farm Aid, and this is one of those songs. I'm sure I don't he didn't specifically write it, but it was part of that repertoire where he's hey, these farmers are getting screwed, and when they hit hardship, it's hard to accept these people own this land for a long time, but now factory farms and they just can't make do, so they have to get rid of their homestead, so to speak. And it's a great song. Again, it's hard not, especially if you've lived in the rural areas, it's hard not to be affected by it and understand, the plight of the farmer. And thank goodness Neil Young and the rest of the John Cougar and Dave Matthews are always bring that forward. Willie Nelson, they always bring that forward. And of course, Farm Aid 2, we were there, so two, it's up to like 20 something now. So interesting.
Yeah, this album, there's a couple songs I'm like, I don't know, but most of it I really like, and particularly this one, and you mentioned American Dream, which I remember the video for that one. I think is it Neil Young's like a photographer or something, or a reporter peeking through a window, and anyway, but this one, yeah, it's I remember this one starts. It's like midnight. That old clock keeps ticking. He's like sitting alone in the living room or something, just thinking over these problems about to lose the family farm, or at least the homestead. And it's a great song. And now I will confess something. I have the wrong song on my list. When we did this remotely, and for those whatever, besides us three, to know we did this remotely, and so we would text or message each other the song names. And for some reason, I saw Our House. And so I have Our House, which I think is a great song off of Deja Vu as well. And I was wondering earlier why you were saying, Jose, that we had three Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young albums. You're like, no, I'm not going to correct him, but you were right. So anyway, I was all prepared to talk about Our House, and actually is partly why I chose my next song. Okay, so Our House, I'm sorry, I'm just going to talk about that one in a second. It was a Graham Nash song, and he wrote it about when he lived with Joni Mitchell. And they broke up, and it was really hard on him. I think harder on him than her. And so my next song, hopefully it still goes well with This Old House, but I did put Love the One You're With, which is, Stephen Still solo song, or was it Manassas? Anyway, it was a Stephen Still song about, love, you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. And I didn't realize this. I always thought that was a great sentiment. It's like, there's so many stories. I mean, who hasn't had somebody they really were enamored with, and that person has no interest and it's not reciprocated? It happens, and so he got that line from Billy Preston. Apparently that was like kind of his thing, he would say a lot. And so they were doing some project, or they were hanging out together. I think Billy Preston's on one or more of his songs. Anyway, so that's where that came from. But I remember this one, and this will come up again. I remember this one from when I was a kid, driving around or riding around with my mom driving, and this would come on the radio. It was during this certain period of time, it was like on a lot, I remember. So anyway, there you go.
Yeah, you know, if you want, if you had to say pick one, you know, Stephen Steele song that kind of, you know, defined him and, you know, whatever. This is probably the one. So when you put it on, I'm like, yeah, that needs to be on the list. There's other ones. I mean, you're going to hear some other ones too later in the playlist that feature Stephen Stills, but vocally, you know, he'll be the first to tell you that vocally he's not, you know, like, hey, I'm not a lead singer kind of thing, right? But yet he has a great voice. But it's his arrangements and the guitar and the other things that really I think in a lot of ways gets overshadowed by the three harmonies and the three, you know, all the songs that Crosby, Stills, Nash put together. If you probably asked each one of them individually, they would all come back to the musicianship of Stephen Stills and his guitar and being able to write a song. You know, is there, and this is a great example of that with "Love the One You're With." It still has the harmonies in there. It still has the hook and all the stuff in there to make it a great kind of a crossover or a pop song that can get a lot of airplay, and it did. Yeah, it's a great song. I've always loved it.
Yeah, it is a great song, and my favorite version of it is on Four-Way Street when they're all playing the acoustic guitar all simultaneously before in between the verses. Just always was just such a great musical moment. Now, I will say, and I might disagree with Mike here again. Love the One You're With was kind of a controversial song only because of my interpretation or what I've read from the books is that Stephen Stills had broken up with Judy Collins. We'll get to her soon enough. And then he had been kind of going and seeing other people, and he was justifying it by, well, if you can't be with the one you love, because he had his tumultuous relationship with her as well. And so he's like, well, you know, if you're not gonna be with me, I'm gonna go find somebody else. And so it's kind of a controversy, you know, if you really listen to it, you know, if you can't be with the one, and he was in a relationship, but yet he decided he was gonna step out, is how I read that. Now, I may misread that somewhere, but I always thought that was kind of controversial that, hey, just you're in a relationship, but you know, if you're not with them, well, okay, there's someone right there. She's right next to you. She's just waiting for you something to do. So anyway, we can agree or disagree, or I'll reread it. I have 2 or 3 books on Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. I like to read those, and they're always the same. These guys always just couldn't get along. I mean, they couldn't even decide when they first sang together. So, and which leads me to the next one, "Lay Me Down," which is a Crosby Nash song. It came out actually in 2004. This was one of those kind of comeback for those guys because again, these guys just could not get along for whatever reason, that all the reasons they've had, relationships, drug abuse, ego, probably the main factor. But Crosby Nash, who had put out about 4 or 5, 3 or 4 solo albums, which I think are fantastic, and some live albums. They came together and they produced this album in 2004, and "Lay Me Down" was one of them. And it just goes to show you when these guys were on, they were on. They just had the most beautiful harmonies and could sing. They didn't write the song, but they could really put down a song when they need, especially Crosby and Nash. It's a shame that they kind of didn't rectify it at the end, depending on who you listen to. But when those two sang, I thought there was, you know, it's probably the best harmonies in rock and roll. I mean, it's just amazing. So anyway, that's one of the reasons I put that song on.
You know, I was not aware of this one. I'm not sure why. It's definitely late, you know, not too many years before David Crosby died, I guess. What year did he die? You know,
Recent, because we did the whole thing. Yeah, this came out
2024.
2004.
Oh, okay. Well, no, it was about 20 years before. I don't know. Everything after 2000 is like yesterday.
That's so
but,
true.
but still, it was like this may have been the last pairing of any of them. I misspoke earlier that Looking Forward came out in the early 2000s too. So I don't know which was later, but yeah, it's a great song that not much more I could say, but I hadn't heard it, and I wanna hear more of the stuff off that record.
I get it confused, and so it's good that you clarified, when it came out or whatever. I mean, I've had it in my playlists and stuff, not from buying the album or whatever, but just having certain songs. And I probably got it mixed up because if you listen to this song, you listen to the first two Crosby Nash albums, right? The first couple of them, it could fit easily into that in the early 70s. So I mean, I just jotted down a couple of things here too when I was thinking about it, like Carry Me, Out of the Darkness, Carried Away, Southbound Train, all of those have that same feel and sound to this Lay Me Down. So I didn't know that it was a more recent one, more recent being in the 2000s versus the 70s. But I've loved this song for years, and just love that duo and that harmony that they can put together. It's kind of sad that Crosby's gone now, and that they won't ever be able to do that. But at least we have the music that they've done. Um, so then at this point, there's a couple classics, that we all know about and that we want to make sure they get on the playlist. I feel bad for not getting Our House onto the playlist. I really probably should have been. But we can only do so many of them, and so at this point, even though you just played Steele's a couple of songs before with Love the One You're With, I said, you know what? This is the point in the middle of the playlist where I'm going to put Sweet, Judy Blue Eyes, and Sweet's not SWEET. It's like a SUITE. It's a suite of songs, which kind of means it's probably a collection of songs, or they probably put it together that way. It's a longer song. It's one that everyone knows. It's really probably the most defining Crosby, Stills, Nash song that there is. And even though I've heard it probably more than any other song on this playlist. Every time I hear it, I never turn it off. I always listen all the way through, waiting for the certain harmonies, know all the lyrics to every single one of the verses that they play. And the last thing I'll say about this song, I mean, it's so good. It has all the different parts and stuff to it, but this is the first time I think where I really locked in on all three of their harmonies, all three of their voices. And so the reason why I like it so much, I've listened to it so many times, is because every time I've listened to it over and over and over again, there's been times where I go, all I'm going to do is focus on Stephen Stills. All I'm going to do is focus on the Graham Nash parts, or all I'm going to do is listen just for David Crosby. And I say that because in this song, David Crosby is always in the middle of those harmonies. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not this music aficionado that I know all this kind of stuff. But let me tell you, the hardest thing to do isn't that top harmony. That's probably the easiest one to pick out. The melody is right there in the chord. It stacks up pretty easily. It's that middle note that can go a lot of different ways. And so that's the brilliance of David Crosby. If you really strip it down and listen to his harmony parts, it blows you away. It's that good. Anyway, enough said.
My favorite part of watching Dave listen to this song, which I've heard him sing thousands of times in the car when we've been in the car many a times, is that at the very end, when he starts going into his Spanish phrases, and Dave would start going, you no quiero bailar. Dave would be,
Y
I
que
don't know. It was
Well,
so
I don't
funny.
know what he's saying. I can't even, I said, Jose, translate for me. What's he saying?
And they would just make me laugh every time Dave would. But yeah, Dave really Dave nails it. And I mean, like you said, we listened to this song 1,000 times, and it never gets old, and it never did. And again, it's written about him and Judy Collins and him breaking up with her, or trying to get back with her, or him regretting breaking up with her, however you want to approach that. But I will never forget the numerous times I had to hear Dave sing the Spanish at the very end, which was always, and sometimes they wouldn't play because you get the short version. So, there is a shortened version on the radio that they used to play. It was only 4 minutes long, but love the song. And again, one of those songs that I knew Dave would pick. I just knew how much he loved the song. So
Yeah, if you were to think of Crosby, Stills, Nash, or Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young songs that were most widely known. I would put this in the top top couple. I mean, it's just so well, it's been played so often, but for a good reason. You know, it is a great song, and it's in different parts. And as far as the harmony thing, funny, Dave, I was thinking that same thing today. In fact, I may have, no, it was yesterday. I'm still working on putting flooring down in my house. And so I had this going while I was doing it. And it may have been this song, but I was trying to pick them out, you know, with my ears. Some of their songs, it's a lot easier. Neil Young wasn't on this one, but he's pretty obvious. But you're right. It's like David Crosby's right there in the middle. It's easy to lose him, at least in this kind of situation. And as far as this Spanish thing, I've always wondered about that. That's such an odd addition. Why did they make that choice? And plus, he does that kind of yelling. I don't know what you call that. I was like, I don't know, kind of goofy, dude, but it's interesting. Anybody know the backstory of why they went into that? Because it's not
Uh,
really,
he
it's
was
about
he
Judy
was
Collins.
heavily influenced by the Caribbean music and the calypso and that kind of thing, and he's tried to incorporate it into a lot of it. If you listen to a lot of his solo albums, there's songs like that as well.
Yeah, he does have some. In fact, we'll probably get into it, but the song I wanted to put on and didn't put on was Southern Cross. It was the one that I the regret not putting it on, but we have enough Stephen Stills representation, so and it was off that same album from Wasted on the Way, but Southern Cross is, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to be misunderstood. I thoroughly adore that song. I respect it for everything it is. Whatever, that little detail makes it even more endearing. But so I followed up with something off of, let's see. Now, this is the first song off this album, CSN, which was kind of their, what do you call it, comeback, but it was a later 70s. And it's, I think, I don't want to really compare it to. Oh, the song was "In My Dreams," David Crosby, with the harmonies along with them. But that album is just again, I don't want to compare it to their first album or anything, but it's just so chock full of. There's not a song in there I don't like, and I recall listening to this one over and over again. I had probably a original copy of it that I got at Half Price Books, and I think I still have that record somewhere. I'm sure it's all scratched to hell by now, but it's oh, it has a couple of different parts too. It's like there's like the David Crosby part, then they almost do this kind of chanting thing at the end, which is interesting. I don't know, well. I just want to give a shout out also that the fact I'm trying to see who's on this one. I can't find it up here, but they didn't do this alone. They had a lot of like Dallas Taylor and a lot. I mean, none of them were percussionists, as far as I know. Maybe some bongos, I don't know. But they had all these supporting musicians, and some of these songs. I think that album the Crosby, that last Crosby, Stills, the Crosby Nash album had a bunch of people on it. The one with Looking Forward, you just should look at the amazing number of great musicians that. So anyway, and oh, what's his name? The drummer who was with Jim Gordon. He even's on one of their songs. Uh, look him up if you want to know more about the crazy Jim Gordon. Um, but yeah, so that has nothing to do with this really. I just thought it was important to mention.
Well, it's another example of like a song where, like I said, it could have fit in different time periods. You mentioned it. You know, this. I wonder if this was born out of an old Crosby Nash song or something, because it seemed to have that same kind of thing. Or like you said, Mike, it could have gone on that very first Crosby, Stills, Nash album, right? With sounding like you don't have to cry, and some of those other just traditional classic Crosby, Stills, Nash songs. Yeah, I've always liked this song. It's a great tune, so I'm glad you put it on for sure.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I was going through all my cassette tapes and I put on one that I had made my own playlist, mixtape, and this song just happened to pop on there coincidentally enough. So obviously, I love the song. I think it's fantastic. There's just nothing like those three getting together, and that, like you said, the beginning. In my dreams, I can look. It's just one of those songs that really captivates you, and I just thought it was it's and it's actually, I think, one of their most overlooked songs, to be honest. It does, you don't immediately go, that's one of my top 10 favorites, but it should be, in some sense, not that you're really gonna crack Crosby, Stills and Nash top 10, because of all their other hits that some obviously, like Our House, that we didn't even put on, or things like that, or Teach the Children that we didn't even put on, that probably should have made it, but In My Dreams ranks high up there. So coming from that, I went with one that is one of their top 10, and by far one of my top five for sure is Wooden Ships. And I just think it's such a great song about what happens after a nuclear war, or up the apocalypse, so to speak, and was it worth it, and what are we doing, and why are we doing this, and just the lyrics themselves. I always love, can I have some of your purple berries? Yes, I've been eating them 6 or 7. Just some great long song lyrics in there that really captivate you when you listen to it. And I used to go out and try to find as many different versions of this song on different CDs and stuff to see it. Other people have sang it as well, and because I just think it's it's a masterpiece of a song for me. So
Yeah, the other people, I guess I still have volunteers, Jefferson Airplane, and they do a real notable version. And I think actually Paul Kantner co-wrote it. I don't know who else might have, but he couldn't, because he was in some kind of legal problem. I looked this up. I didn't just know this. He was in some kind of legal issue with their management at the time. He was afraid that if he put his name on this song with them, it would get legally frozen up, and then it would prevent them as well from putting it out. So he didn't get credited until years later. But yeah, and the other thing is, funny enough, for the longest time, I didn't realize this was about post-nuclear war. I thought it was about these two soldiers who were kind of fleeing the battle, the horror of the battle, and they're opposite sides, and they come together in friendship, and seeing just the horror across, I guess, across the water or whatever. But I looked it up today, and yeah, that's why it's wooden ships, because wood is not necessarily easily carrying radioactivity as metal ships. But yeah, what more can you say about the song? You could just go on and on and on. I mean, it's just such a great song. I agree with you. It's my top few favorites. Well, I have many favorites, but way up there in the top.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite. I wouldn't say it's in my top or whatever, but it's one of those ones where Jose keeps saying, "Oh, I knew you were going to put this one on." Well, Jose, I knew you were going to put this, and you ripped my line because I don't remember all the lyrics of them. But if you hadn't said it already, I was going to say, yeah, he's going to put this one on because he likes. Yeah, hey, can I have some of your purple berries? Yes, I've been eating them for 6 or 7 weeks now. I haven't got sick once. I knew you were going to go with that line too. So you stole it from me. But no, in fact, we laughed about it every time this song came on. When it got to that part, we would always definitely know that line. I also just like how it starts out too, with the very beginning, which is, I don't know if it's like they're muted chords where they're, it's like a whatever, and then it goes dun dun dun, just breaks into that. Just a great song. Glad we put on some of the classics on it for sure. After that, I had an opportunity to put the next song on, and I did not put on Our House, but I was looking for what would be like a song where I said, man, I got to get Graham Nash out there, right? One of my songs has to be, totally a Graham Nash type of a song. And for me, Cathedral was that song. It's Crosby, Stills, Nash song, but it's features Graham Nash on the piano, and the melody of it, and I like the storyline of it. He's in in a cathedral somewhere, and he sees a tombstone, and it looks at the birth date, and it notices it was mine, and then his head starts spinning back in time, and and all of it. I don't know what it means, but I just love the imagery of it, right, and the whole thing with it, and I don't know. I just always love the song, and again, it showcases the greatness of Graham Nash.
Yeah, not to sound like a broken record. I knew this song was going to be on yours. There's just no way this song was not going to be on. Dave used to sing it. After I learned it, I sang, I'm standing on Winchester. It's just such a great song. Open up the pearly gates and let me in. There are too many people. Just so many great parts of that song. Such a Graham Nash song. It just fits right in. I was immediately taken away with it when Dave introduced it to me because I know he did, and I immediately caught on. And there's just you get caught up in the whole sweepiness. It's kind of hokey when you really listen to it in a sense, but it really isn't. It's really kind of open up the pet. I don't know what it is about that song, but I knew Dave would put it on. We know each other really well, especially back then, and that when that song came on, we were singing to that song. There was just no way that we were getting around that. So I thought it was just such a great choice.
Yeah, this is off of that same CSN album that had In My Dreams. We have another one. I think that album makes the most appearances on this list. And that was my favorite song on, or is still on this album. The harmonies among more than anything else, kind of haunting imagery. And it's a political, definitely political commentary about war and people justifying things in the name of religion that don't necessarily have to be justified that way. I've always wondered, was he in an altered state of mind when he paid the visit to this? There's this line like, I'm high up on the altar. I
Uh,
don't know. And just, it sounds like he's kind of having a little bit of a moment there. So I don't know.
well, yeah, well, but the fact that he's also, he noticed it was his birthday and he's going back in time. I think he kind of swooshed it all together into one big, no real concrete thing there going. But yeah, and then when he's
Sure.
singing, oh, I'm high, high on the, because when you say I'm high, you think, oh, he's high. No, he's high on the altar. So I don't
Yeah.
know if he did that intentionally or he did. I think he did, obviously.
Is this based on an actual experience he had? Like
Not that I ever read,
the
but it could
grave
have
the
been.
graveside, or
Yeah, it could have
eh,
been.
curious. Well, so I followed that up with so our third Crosby is it third or fourth? Crosby Nash song. So it's Immigration Man off of, I guess the album's called Graham Nash, David Crosby. And the funny thing about this song, well, first off, it's one of the earliest of their songs I remember. And, whatever the content of the lyrics aside, I just remember it as a kid hearing it on the radio and really liking it. And so a few years later, when I started buying records, I was looking for this one, but it was in the pre-internet, at least in my household, pre-internet days. And so I had the hardest time trying to find this particular record. I go to Half Price Books and whatever. And so I bought the wrong Crosby Nash album, which I liked. I think it was the one we used earlier. No, it wasn't. Anyway, another record, whatever. And yeah, my understanding is um, Graham Nash was come again. This is kind of his song. He's singing. Was coming, trying to get into the country, and for whatever reason, immigration was hassling him. Um, and so he was mad about it. However, there is he does make it a more general thing about, if go where you will, as long as you think you can, you better watch out for the man. And so that, that could apply beyond just that time period.
Yeah, it was, you know, when I first was listening to the playlist, going over it again, it was, you know, we tried to vary it. Look, you know, we would with the different artists, wherever. And this is one where we went kind of back to back with Graham Nash on the, you know, on the lead vocal there. And but this is a great song, and it's one that I'm glad made it on the playlist. Probably has as much timeliness than it did way back in the day. You know, I mean, with all the things going on with the border patrol and immigration and everything else, you know, you could almost bring it forward, and it has meaning today. Um, but yeah, it's a classic song. It's the one that I've always loved.
Yeah, I have to admit, I used to not like this song for whatever reason. I don't know why. And I've learned to love it. And one of the reasons, obviously, timeless, but we all are of the generation where we know that our grandparents or our great grandparents were immigrants at some point. And so we can still kind of have a feel for that. My mom comes from Spain, so I'm first generation immigrant from that. And so it really hits home more, obviously, when we get older, and of course now even more so. That yeah, this he back then, and this is what in the 70s or the 60s or 70s, where he's talking about the same problems that what all immigrants deal with, whether it's back 40, 50 years ago and now. So, it really is one of those important songs. And again, goes back to the social. He would never have thought that this would still be relevant today, so to speak. And yet it's even more relevant than when he was there, when he was probably singing this. So I bet he still sings it in concert. So yeah, I just thought it was a fabulous song. Like I said, it's really come to grow on me. I used to fall into that trap that I used to all Graham Nash songs sound the same kind of thing. You get Wild Tale, his solo album, the piano, it's King My, and then you really gotta parse through that. You really gotta overlook that and listen to the lyrics and see what they're saying. So, and I used to have that, I admit it. So anyway, coming from that, I went with Long May You Run. Stills Young. I think Mike brought this up before, that this was kind of these guys were a super group in a sense. And before there was Crosby, Stills and Young, there was Buffalo Springfield, and they eventually came together with Crosby and Nash. And this album came out later after their breakup in '74, and it was supposed to be kind of a movie. Jim Jarmusch was supposed to put together this movie with them. I think it's out there, but they put together this album, which isn't the greatest album. I have it on. I have it on cassette somewhere, and I listen to it. There's some songs on there that aren't the greatest in the world, but this song really stood out for me because, of course, it's one of those songs of enduring. And even though Young and as much as Crosby Nash had their fights, Stills, Stills and Young definitely had their fights, and their egos definitely always got in the way. But what was always fabulous about those two is their guitar work against each other. And the live albums, if you ever listen to, and Carry On Four-Way Streets, where they're just going back and forth. It's just it's just great rock and roll, and two great guitars on the same wavelength, so to speak. And I thought this song was one of those songs that they were on the same wavelength together. They were playing the song, and with an enduring quality of the lyrics of "Long May You Run," keep going, keep enduring. So that's one of the reasons I picked it.
Yeah, this song I didn't have this record. I think years later I heard it, but I think it was on Decade, which is a Neil Young kind of greatest hits. I heard it some in the context of being a Neil Young song, and didn't realize for a long while that Stephen Stills was in there, because Neil kind of takes the lead, but Stills is on there too. And The thing that I whenever I hear this song, it makes me think of my first car that I bought, because he's talking about his, I don't know if it's his first car, but a beloved long gone car. And I have one of those. I bought it for I think like $1,500 in about '82. was a 1970 Chevelle, and that was a badass car. And it was just like I look back on it, it's like that I did so many great things with that car, and it's like how did I ever let that go? You know, I'm sure I think the engine went out, and I'm just like I can't deal with this. You know, we have things like that we regret now, but hopefully she's still out there somewhere, been restored because those cars are worth a lot now. But yeah,
You know, I have to echo what you said, Mike. You, number one is, yeah, I didn't know that it was Stills Young necessarily. I think maybe years later I remember that, but I think I always thought it was just as a Neil Young song, and it might have been on one of those compilation records. That's where I kind of first heard it. Always loved this song. And I like that analogy with the, it's long may you run, may we run, but also, he kind of ties it into the old car as well. My first one was a 1970 Carmen Ghia, and we won't get into the details, but I had two wrecks in one day. Uh,
You
and
love
that
that
car is
day.
no longer will it ever run again, after that day. I think we scrapped it, but this is a great song. Yeah, I love the song, and it put Neil Young out there again. So at this point I was like, okay, we've had a couple of ones that featured Neil Young. We've had some Stephen Stills, and we even had some David Crosby, but I was looking personally at trying to find a Crosby a song or a song that featured him. And we really didn't go very deep into solo stuff. I mean, we could have gone at this point. Before you played that song, I was looking at a Neil Young song, and I was going to maybe put something off the original Harvest, with Out on the Weekend or something like that I hadn't heard in a long time. But because you played the Neil Young thing, I kind of pivoted to Crosby, and we've talked about him a lot with him passing recently, and we even put him on a song when we were memorializing him on our playlist, and so we have talked to him, but he has a solo album. Titled "Oh Yes I Can," and the title track of that song, "Oh Yes I Can," has just always been a favorite of mine, and so been looking for an opportunity to put this on any of our playlists, and what better way than on a Crosby, Stills, Nash Young playlist? So got the opportunity and went ahead and put that song on there. Just like his vocal, I love the lyrics of the song and how he's lost his love, he's lost his wife or whatever, and he wants to be the man, to show her that he can be the man again, that he can still do it. And he says, "Oh yes, I can. I can still do this," and it's just a beautiful song.
Yeah. If there was one song I wouldn't have guessed that you would pick on is this one, and I'm glad you did because it really is good. And like you said, and I guess I'm guilty of more. I've learned to appreciate more of David Crosby's solo albums in the 2000s than I did before, and I love to listen to his songs. He's more reflective, he's more introspective, and it really can relate to your life at a lot of times. I think this kind of came out at the same time his one of his autobiography came out, which I think is the same name.
I think it was 1989
Yeah,
ish.
right. Where and so this was kind of part of his rediscovering himself, so to speak, and getting his act together, so to speak. And I think since then, I think of all the solos after maybe minus Neil Young, because Neil Young is just a machine, but all of his stuff coming out afterwards, I think impacts me more than the other guys, so to speak. So yeah, I love that song.
yeah, I another one I didn't have the record, but I recall it because I think I saw an interview with him on something like Good Morning America or something like that, the Today Show. It was talking about the book and or the record, and a lot of it he was kind of the questions at least were kind of reflecting back on his arrest and time in Loose Sterrett Jail in Dallas, Texas. I was there when I wasn't there when it happened. I was living in Richardson's where I moved to Austin, and he had he was playing a solo show and apparently he was in really bad shape, and he got busted backstage, I think, for possession. And he had done so much to himself that he ended up having to get a liver transplant later. But he came out of that experience. I mean, shows how strong a person he was in the end. He came out of that experience and turned it around and continued to do many years of great music. And so when I hear this song, I know it's about a relationship, and he's trying to say, "Hey, you know, I can do this. I don't want to be that person I was." I kind of also hear it in that way. Oh, yes, I can. I can succeed. I can. I don't have to do the things I did before. There's more to me than that, you know. So, great choice. It's another one I've got to listen to. I have it up here on the screen, looking at the names of the songs. Anyway, so I went from that into I had the last song, and I was again. I guess I was about to be guilty of doubling up on two musicians, same musicians in a row, because I was thinking of using Delta. There was which David Crosby sings. I don't know. Was that on Daylight Again?
Daylight Again, yeah.
Yeah, so we would have ended and begun with the same thing, but then in the back of my mind, and these two fine gentlemen remind me there is a song that would be a great ending, just a song before I go, which is the third one off the CSN record. And yeah, how could I not do that? There are just too many other songs that I would like to have. I've already talked about this, but this one really needed to be. It is fit, and it's a really interesting, another, I guess, Graham Nash, basically leaving town, leaving somebody behind to go out on the road
What
or something. And
may I?
yeah,
You've heard the story behind this song? I don't
Yeah.
know
no,
if you have.
If you didn't, I was going to tell it, but go, yeah,
Yeah,
go.
he bet them that he could write a song in 10 minutes. And they were like, no, you can't. And then he was watching TV, and a United Airlines commercial came on, and he wrote the song. That's how he wrote the song,
Right.
which also dealt with, obviously deals with going on the road and stuff like that. But yeah, that's how that song came about.
I think they even used it for like In the Friendly Skies. They used it in their ad campaign or something, right? Like one of the major, I
yeah,
don't know which one.
to the friendly skies. That's right. That's right. Yeah, and that just goes even more uh, uh, comment on his talent, that he could do that for such a great song. It's I remember when this was on the radio. It was another one they played a whole bunch. This is the late '70s, I guess. But there's a reason for that. So I wanted to end with something like that, and yeah, I'm happy I did it.
It's a great song. It's one of my favorites as well. And like Jose had kind of said, it was based on a bet and whatnot. But um, yeah, it was a great choice to end the playlist. I wanted to say something about Crosby, Stills, Nash real quick. I don't know if I heard on a it was probably an interview or whatever where they said, "Well, how'd you come up with the name? And how did you decide which order you would put it in?" And I always thought that was so funny because if you think about it, and you look at the pictures behind me, got all the people there, and if you start try to put it into a different order and see if how it sounds, right? So like, what if it was Nash steals Crosby Young, or Young steals and you start doing all the different combinations, and it was Crosby who was doing the interview, and he's like, see, it just does, it just works. You got to start with, you got to have Crosby first, and it just kind of flows off. Crosby steals Nash, and then they added Young. So it couldn't have been any other way, I guess, is what he was kind of saying. It wasn't that they when they came up with what was going to be the order. It wasn't like Crosby was the leader and they had to have his name first or anything. But anyway, enjoyed doing the playlist. A lot of fun, and it's one of those ones where when I feel like I'm in the mood for Crosby, Stills, Nash, I'm gonna throw this playlist on. And the beauty of it is, if we miss a song or two, and we'll probably talk about that or whatever, is that sometimes I find myself doing that too, where I'm listening to a playlist and it might have a certain particular artist or something on there. And then what do? Hey, that reminds me, I'm going to go listen to another one of these songs. And so if one's not on this list, it spurs me to go listen to the full album or another song off that album.
Yeah, it's first of all, for the song itself, we kind of bullied Mike into it. We apologize for bullies, but it seems such a natural fit for it that it's like, oh my God, if that's not played. Anyway, I'm glad you did put it on, even though we are bullies. But it's like Dave said, and I'll just, Dave talks about getting weepy and stuff like that and things of that nature. But this really is, I think this group for Dave and I apologize, Mike, that was one of the most significant for us. We just love them so much. And it really brings you back to all the good times that we had back in those days where we would just listen to them and then find the Crosby Nash albums and discover the solo stuff. So it kind of brings me back to those years where we were putting together these mixtapes more than any other group, I think, just simply because they were we played them all the time, and there was a reason because they were great songs. So yeah, every time I listen to it, and I listen to it at least 10 times because it brings you back to that nice warm spot where we used to be. And like I said, I tell the stories of Dave singing and just having fun in the car and going to Crosby, Stills and Nash, all those elements together. It was good. I was a little skeptical, I admit. Oh, we're doing another group, but this was the perfect. As many as we do the Stones, the Beatles, the Floyd, Bob Dylan, this group has the most sentimental value for me, so to speak, only because of all the great memories I've put together. So just wanted to throw that out there. Any last words, Mike, Dave?
I would say this has probably been the one playlist I've listened to the most between making it and doing the video. And I think it is because you described it as that it goes to that warm place. Even the hard songs, there's still something about their harmonies and such. And I have a lot going on the last week. It was a pretty stressful week. And just an example, I'm putting down this flooring, and it's been a very frustrating process because I have never done anything like this before. And so I was constantly having to pull up this flooring. And it's like, I want to listen to some music to distract me. And I tried a couple of things and nothing flew. And I put this on, it's like, okay, breathe, it's cool. Everything's going to be okay. You're eventually going to get this done and the other stresses in your life, whatever. The only other thing I'd add, when I originally we were talking about this, I had expressed interest in doing a Neil Young one of these, and so I still like to do that. Some of all of them, like you say, he's the most prolific, and at least in my life of these guys, the one that's had the biggest impact. So somewhere down the road, I would like to do that. But it's a great. It's we say this all the time, but it probably is one of my favorite playlists. It's probably the one I knew the songs in advance better than any other playlist, barring and give one or two songs. So glad we did it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate all y'all's input. I thought it was a great playlist, like both of y'all said, and glad we can continue this. I'm sure we'll come up with another theme soon enough and bring you back some more music. Again, it's always about the music. So enjoy and see y'all later.